Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Recorded crime is on the rise in England and Wales, and the number of violent incidents recorded by the police has seen a particularly big increase. The overall crime rate went up by 11% in the year to March, according to new figures from the Office for National Statistics. The number of killings and murders rose by 12%, and crimes involving a knife by 16%. There was also a 30% increase in the number of robberies, which include muggings. It comes as other figures today show that detection rates are at their lowest level for 3 years. Our Home Affairs correspondent Tom Simons reports.
When more violent crimes being reported, this is the sort of crime fighting that's needed. We're with a specialist team tackling the moped gangs, tonight active in West London.
Same suspects are known to carry weapons, including hammers and knives.
They use these nippy scooters to steal and terrify, driving up the number of reported robberies. Police say they hunt in packs because scooters are hard to stop.
We need 2 or 3 vehicles to make a box.
What is it? Yeah, it's all right, now.
2 men have run a red on a type of scooter often used by the gangs.
Come and touch. Just stand there for us.
But there's no evidence they're involved in robbery. It's all about getting the officers into the right place at the right time, in force, to target specific types of crime like this. And these officers do believe they're now making a difference. In their area, the City of London, there were 56 robberies in January, but just 2 last month, a small dent in the national crime figures. Is it a bit depressing to see the crime figures going up when you're doing this sort of work?
It is. It'd be wrong of me to say it isn't, because we want to be out there to be seen to be working well. We do know that there are days then we will suffer offences because we can't be everywhere at the same time.
Right.
True. Reported crime is rising, but increasingly police also have to deal with other social problems which aren't crime. Simultaneously, police numbers have been cut to 1996 levels. In Manchester, that's 2,000 fewer officers and real pressure.
Certainly the officers I lead and my members are really frustrated, as much as the public are, that we can't do as much as we used to do or can't do it as effectively. That causes real frustration to our officers as well, who simply want to do the best job for the public, and that's a real concern.
Which may explain another crucial statistic. In 9 out of 10 cases, no one is charged. In London today, there were raids in the fight against knife crime, up again in these figures. The family of Daniel Fox, stabbed to death in Merseyside, believe the police need help. They've been distributing cards to young people, giving advice about how to raise the alert if they see a knife.
It's just devastated the whole family. It's so unreal to us. We've still not taken it in, and I think with doing the campaign, it's took our minds off it.
Back in London, a scooter has failed to stop. Contrary to what many believe, the police are not banned from pursuing two-wheelers. But within seconds, he slips away. Maybe tomorrow.
And Tom is with me, and people listening to that will be concerned, obviously, at the figures, but also the news that the number of crimes being solved has fallen.
Yeah, the detection rate. So in 2015, the detection rate was 15%, so it's still quite low, and it has fallen, as we heard there, to 9%. Now, that is not easy to explain. Partly it may be due to the national lack of detectives. Police forces are trying to recruit more detectives. But I think also it's to do with the fact that some of the crimes that are increasing are the most hard to detect and solve, in particular rape. So the national figure of 9% for all crimes, it's 3% for rapes. It's a bit better for robberies, the kind of work we saw there last night, but still fewer than half of robberies and muggings are solved. So a lot really for the police to think about, and it's about targeting some of those high harm crimes, as the police call them. And it's worth saying that those are the crimes where people are most likely to be injured, most likely to be badly hurt. And as a result, those crimes are still quite few in number. If you take the National Crime Survey, which is asking everybody what crime they've suffered in the last year, still we're seeing a reduction, long-term reduction in crime. So it is a mixed picture in these statistics.
All right, Tom, thank you. Tom Simons.
We start with a shocking insight into Britain's spiralling knife and gun crime epidemic, with the latest figures showing another large spike in violent crime. We heard from medics on the front line who deal with the often deadly consequences. ITV News filmed with a specialist trauma unit in Liverpool, where we saw the horrific injuries inflicted on victims and the desperate efforts to save their lives. Staff told us extreme violence is so commonplace, even gunshot wounds no longer surprise them. And a warning that this special report from our national editor, Allegra Stratton, contains graphic images of some of those injuries.
In the last hour, in a house in central Liverpool, this man endured the most gruesome attack. In the middle of the night, men broke into his home in front of one of his children, went at him many times with a machete and an axe. Liverpool's specialist trauma unit is now trying to save his life.
Okay, on 3, 1, 2, 3.
Heart rate 112. He's got a 10 centimetre laceration on his right upper forearm. Goes through to the muscle. And he's got a second wound on his scalp above his ear, around 5 centimetres long.
Okay, so we're going to go back on 3. Everyone ready? 1, 2, 3.
Dealing with such brutality, they have much work to do.
He's got wounds to his head, his back, his chest, both legs, got quite a few broken bones, really deep lacerations that go right down to bone.
Okay, can you push down on my hand, please? You can't. Okay, so he's struggling to move his left foot. Push down on my hand.
This man went on to recover, but what we saw over the course of a week was extremely shocking. We were given access to all areas by Liverpool Aintree Hospital, 24 hours a day, over 7 days.
Keep breathing for me.
From the trauma bays reserved for the most seriously hurt in all of the Northwest.
All right, darling, you're doing really well.
To the operating theatres and patients' bedsides too. The doctors and nurses here want people to realise extreme violence is increasing and the consequences. It's not just a feeling they have. Surgeon Nikhil Misra can prove it.
There's been an increase year on year for the last 3 to 4 years. It's now becoming a real problem, not just for us in the Major Trauma Centre, but for the city. It's got pretty bad for us this year. The last 3 months, April, May and June, have seen a 54% increase in knife-related trauma as compared to the first 3 months of the year. And this is almost reaching epidemic proportions.
It's midnight and the trauma unit is on alert for this stabbing victim. He's come from 10 miles away.
This is Daniel Morehouse. He is 34 years young. He was walking through a school playground when he got attacked from behind, stabbed into the right side of his flank region. Got bystanders and officer, they called for us.
He's got a 3 centimetre wounds, the right flank. Get these bloods off, you're okay. We'll give you some painkiller and then we'll do a scan, yeah, and see what's going on, okay?
At first, Danny appeared stable and happy to talk.
I've never experienced that pain before.
We just leapt out of nowhere.
Literally leapt out of nowhere. I was walking off from the pub and then it just like sharp pain. I was like that and then literally ran off.
But 20 minutes later, he's taken a turn for the worse. Danny may have just 1 stab wound, but the staff here know that the last 5 people in Liverpool killed by a knife, some of them treated in this exact bed, were all stabbed just once.
It's quite bad. So Allegra, what he's done is there's a single stab wound. It's damaged that part of his kidney there. That's all blood. He's lost a lot of blood.
How dangerous is that?
That's potentially life-threatening.
In the last hour that Danny's been in, he's gone downhill. Even though his stab wound wasn't large, I saw it myself, it was 3 centimetres by 2 centimetres. Nonetheless, it's done a lot of damage. The scan is clear, he has ruptured his kidney, and inside his body there's an awful lot of bleeding, and that's why the surgeons around his bed are pretty worried. Danny's parents arrive, having been woken in the middle of the night by the hospital.
It's just said he was on his own when it happened, which has spooked me more now, because he could have just collapsed and been left there, couldn't he?
Can you believe it's happened to Danny?
No, I can't.
Why not?
Because he's just a normal working lad, coming home after a drink, yeah. Why do it? Why stab someone and just leave him and just go? Don't even attempt to rob him or nothing.
Nikhil sends Danny off for radiology, and at 2:30 a.m. they operate to stop internal bleeding. He makes a quick recovery, but in the end, that one stab has claimed half his right kidney, and he was centimetres from death. But during the course of the week, it wasn't just knife crime we saw. This young man is just 20 years old, but has been shot 3 times. Surgeons kept him alive by opening his chest up and picking shrapnel out of his heart and his liver. You can see the grazes from shrapnel on his arms too. How often do you see something like that?
Quite a bit.
Quite a bit?
Mm.
So it doesn't shock you anymore?
Not really.
He's still in a serious condition, but though Liverpool's trauma unit has saved the 3 patients we met, luck helped too. The luck of where the weapon struck. Doctors and nurses around the country want people to realise that medicine can't save everyone.
Well, Merseyside saw violent crime rise by almost a fifth last year, but the epidemic is affecting the whole of England and Wales. The latest official police figures show that in the year to March, knife crime was up 16%, robbery was up 30%, homicides, including murders, were up 12%, and gun crime up 2%. Labour says cuts to police budgets is behind the rise. The government admits the figures are the worst for a decade, but insists it's not connected to the number of officers. Allegra has joined us in the studio, and just really shocking images there in your report, especially the medics saying that they're just not surprised by it anymore. So how do they tackle this?
Well, the government tell us that they published their serious violence strategy in April. It was a pretty serious document. In it, it included plans to legislate to ban the sale of knives online. And indeed, just this week, we've heard from the government that they want all schools to have knife crime lessons in schools. So there's action in that sense. But really, there is... if you talk to the guys like we did for 7 days, Charlene, we were in there for 7 days, when you say some of these things to them, they just sort of sigh. They say it really is coming in constantly, a wave, and you expect these medics to be quite sober and dispassionate, but actually they use phrases like overwhelmed. So I think from the perspective of the people in Liverpool, there isn't enough bit coming from central government. Tomorrow, in our report, we look at the efforts being spearheaded by Liverpool and that surgeon Nikhil Misra as he tries to get Everton Football Club, Merseyside Police together to do more preventative work.
OK, we'll look forward to that tomorrow, Allegra. Thank you.
Crime levels in England and Wales have gone up again, according to new figures for the year ending in March, showing there's been an increase in violent crime, including murders and other killings. According to the Office of National Statistics, knife crime has risen by 16% compared to the same period last year. Robberies have surged by 30%, whilst burglaries are up by 6%. And in 9 out of 10 crimes, no one ends up charged or summoned. Here's our senior Home Affairs correspondent, Simon Israel, and please be warned, there are distressing images from the very start of his report.
Daytime, South London, last weekend. Another stabbing. Another victim, this time a man in his 30s, attacked on a bus. This won't feature in today's annual crime stats, but still challenges claims the government is getting violent crime under control. The stats show knife crime alone is up 16%.
We've been here before 10 years ago in Britain. It takes time. We look at the examples of other cities. It takes time, but what you need is this combination of robust law enforcement so that young people know that if they get caught up in this, they're going to get caught and the consequences will be severe. But if they want to move away from it, they're going to be supported on that journey.
The village of Ordsall in Nottinghamshire stopped relying on government promises ages ago. This is the nightly patrol of the district of Retford, population around 18,000.
There's some garages over here on the right-hand side.
From midnight to 4 a.m, volunteers crisscross every neighbourhood.
Sometimes we'll just stand and listen, see if we can hear anything specific.
Former police officer Trevor Rose is one of half a dozen on the streets tonight. His partner is a gas engineer. Crime is now minimal. Last year, there were 39 burglaries in a single month.
We know the police resources are strapped, so we have to fill that gap because crime was, you know, rife really before we took this on. It was quite, you know, there were burglaries happening on a regular basis. We all kind of got together and thought, well, enough is enough, you know. We need to do something about it.
When crime happens, they all feel it. Late last year, 87-year-old Margaret Whitlam came home to find she'd been burgled.
We went upstairs and every drawer and every wardrobe, everything had been pulled out and all over the place, all over the bed, all over the floor. I had to walk on my own clothes to get into the room.
The feeling of vulnerability, the insecurity, has not gone away.
You never forget. People think you do, but you don't. It's the same when I go out. I'm frightened going out, although I've got the neighbourhood watch put me the alarm in. And I put it on all the time when I go out. Like, you know, it's the same when you come back, you look round and you're frightened to come back because you don't know what's going to be when you come back, you know what I mean? If I see anybody strange at the gate, I'm frightened, and I'm frightened. I don't know where to go. I'm frightened.
Margaret's burglary remains unsolved. These residents may be the eyes and ears of the police on the streets during the village's most vulnerable hours, but they are not detectives. Nottinghamshire Police acknowledge the solution is more resources.
Burglary has seen an increase in Nottinghamshire, but we've responded to that by putting effort, energy and resource into the things that matter to our community, which is burglary, hence our dedicated burglary teams, and now we are starting to see the positive results of that.
Yet another Home Office report today reveals that barely 1 in 10 crimes has led to someone being caught. Annual figures to March reveal detection rates at their lowest for 3 years, just as recorded crime continues to rise. So in Ordsall, these patrols matter.
As you can see,
Simon Israel reporting. Well, now Jackie Sabir is the National Police Chiefs Council national leader on serious violent crime, and she joins us now from Bedfordshire Police Headquarters. Assistant Chief Constable Sabir, what's your explanation for what you think is happening in violent crime?
I think there's a number of explanations for this. First and foremost, I think we do record crime better, but also I think underlying a lot of the serious violence is the drug market and the change in the drug market, how the territorial disputes and county lines happening, so young people coming in from urban areas into small market towns, that in turn generates a lot of serious violence as well. But undoubtedly we do come back to the issue of resources, not only policing resources, but social care, youth provision, all of those really important assets that we know work are underfunded. So it is a really difficult, almost perfect storm that I think is behind some of these figures we've seen today.
Well, in a nutshell, cutting police numbers simply doesn't work. I mean, we're told 20,000 less police on the streets in the last 2 or 3 years.
That's correct. We're at the lowest level of resources that we've seen for a long time. And not only have we got fewer resources, what we're expected to do, what my officers on the front line are expected to do, has expanded. We deal with sort of mental health issues, missing children, obviously the counter-terrorism issues. So it's not just crime we're looking at, it's all the areas of vulnerability that we are now having to serve as the policing landscape has changed. And officers are working really hard to do that, but there will become a tipping point where it becomes much more difficult to be able to service all of that in the way that we want
Right.
to.
Well, when we asked the Minister for Policing and Fire Services, Nick Hurd, what was happening, he said, well, the number of people joining the police force is at a 10-year high. Demonstrates policing is still a desirable and sought-after career. That doesn't exactly give us an answer.
Well, we do have increased recruitment, that's absolutely true, but we're also struggling in terms of losing a lot of experience out the force. We know that we have a crisis in detectives and recruiting detectives, so what's really important is while the Home Office and the Police Chiefs Council look at resourcing across the whole of the public sector, what's really important for me is what we do with the resources we have, and the only way to deal with this is to coordinate them better with all the partners and the community and parents, and look at what we know what works and focus on that and ensure victims of crime, like the ones that you've earlier reported, don't feel scared in their own home, and we can make sure that they get the services they need.
But do we have to recognise that given the government has given priority to health, that you are not going to be given really very many more resources? I mean, a lot of people do say they never see a policeman in a day's walking around in a town or whatever. I mean, of course there are bobbies on the beat, but nothing like on the scale of, say, 20 years ago.
And that is true. There will be fewer frontline resources visible on the street. But if you look at crime, it's moved from the street into the home. When you look at online grooming, you look at CSE, a lot of crime that we deal with now is actually indoors, and we can only solve that through online research, through detectives. So actually we'll be solving more crime, but won't be doing it necessarily on the street as the public were used to.
Well, Assistant Chief Constable, thank you very, very much for joining us. Thank you.